You're listening to Theology for Teens with Nathan LaValle. Thanks for clicking on my face today. We're doing the first episode in a series of episodes in a series called Dead in the Water. And in this series, we're going to be looking at 3 questions. Depending on how we answer these questions, we're either going to be dead in the water or we're going to be free to continue swimming and exploring. Free fish. Okay, I'm hoping we're going to be free fish because my goal is to go on and move on to discuss the finer points of theology, the important points of theology, the things you need to know if you call yourself a Christian. If you call yourself a Christian, there are things that you are implicated on believing because you are a follower of Jesus, because he is God in your view. And if he's God, then what he says really matters, and what he believes really matters, and who he is really matters. That's where we're getting. But we can't do that unless we talk about these 3 questions. Now, I'm going to be answering them as honestly as I possibly can. I want to really come to the table transparently. If indeed one of these questions sinks my belief in Christianity, we'll just cancel the podcast. That'll be the last episode I post. But the first question I've already explored, and I'm pleased to announce that I don't think I'm dead in the water, but I'll leave you to decide. The topic we're going to be covering this week is as follows. Does objective truth exist? Does objective truth exist? Now, before we even talk about this question, it's important to explain the words because some people may not know what objective truth exists. When I asked my youth group last night, who knows what objective truth exists? A lot of people raised their hand. I noticed some didn't. And so I said, who doesn't know what objective truth means or what objective means? And no one raised their hands. I said, come on, you can say, like, tell me, really tell me. And several students' hands went up. Quite a few, actually. Objective is a word that people throw around, but very few people actually define. And so let me explain what I mean by objective. When I say objective, I mean that this thing is true regardless of anyone's opinion of it. The more advanced way of saying this is the truth corresponds to reality. In other words, if everyone in the world believed something differently, that wouldn't change whether or not it was true. Now, let me give you just a few examples, and we'll compare objective and subjective. So let me just one more time before we get into the examples. Objective means that regardless of what anyone thinks, there's a correct and true answer. Subjective is opinion-based. There's not an objective true answer when we're talking about subjective. If you think something different than I think, it's not necessary to say that one of us is right and the other one is wrong. We can each have our preference. We can each have our opinion. So in objective, we're working in the realm of actual truth. Doesn't matter what you believe. In subjective, we're working with the concept of preference, opinion. It's subjective. So let's look at 3 examples of objective versus subjective. So number 1, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Is this objective or subjective? I am going to put forward to you that it's objective. Let me explain. If you think 2 plus 2 equals 5, you're not right. And if you think 2 plus 2 equals 3, you're not right. And if everyone in the world said 2 plus 2 equals 5, that would not make them right. 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's written into the fabric of our universe. It's intuitive. It makes perfect sense. It's objectively true. It's definitionally true, we could even say. In the definition of 4 is the concept that 2 and 2 create it. This is objective truth. Now, regardless of what you think about this, you can't change the result of this math equation. 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. So that's objective. Now, an example of something subjective is your preference for pineapple on pizza, okay? If you are one of the crazy people that enjoys pineapple on pizza, then you hold to a subjective view different than I hold to. I don't enjoy that. I don't find it cute to put pineapple on pizza, but you might. And guess what? I'm not right with you being wrong, and you're not right with me being wrong. We're talking about preference. We're talking about opinion. It's subjectively true that pizza without pineapples is better than without. It's what I think. Might not be what you think. So that's subjective. Your opinion actually has an effect on that truth claim in your mind. Now, let me give you another example of objective. Quite a while ago, companies realized that when they exposed their employees to very loud sounds, even mediumly loud sounds, for a sustained period of time, that they would accumulate hearing loss over the course of time. And so they realized that sounds that are produced at 85 decibels, when listened to for 8 hours, can and often does produce hearing loss. This is an objective reality, that this can and often does happen. Whether or not you like it, the average human ear does not respond to that level of noise for that amount of time in a positive way over the course of years and years and years of exposure. Now, are there anomalies? Yes, but we're not stating that this is actually true for everyone. Now, it's objectively true that in general this will happen. So it's important to notice that objective truths don't only apply to things like math, but they also apply to generalities. This is actually an objective reality that this is going to happen for most people. Now, are there some people who are born deaf and when exposed to this level of volume won't experience hearing loss? Yes, but that's an exception and that's not the rule. So this is another great example of something objective. So we wear hearing protection. Now, if you're a youth, a teen, and you go to a concert and it's going to be like a 6 or 7 hour long rager and it's going to be 100 decibels for that period of time, no matter how much you will it, you will not be able to produce hearing loss without hearing protection. And so this is, again, it's objective. Regardless of what you think of it, it's true or false. On to another subjective. What's your favorite color? Mine is clear. My kids always get a laugh when I say that my favorite color is clear. And I'm not going to admit that that's not a real color, so don't try to make me. But you might prefer red or blue or black or green. Again, some people out there who are engineers might be saying, or who are artists might say, black's not a color. That's not the point. The point is this: we can all have our own favorite color. The reason for that is because it's a subjective, opinion-based truth, okay? There's not an objectively best color. Now, we could dive down a deep rabbit hole. It's a dangerous rabbit hole as far as time's concerned, of did Jesus have a favorite color? And if Jesus did have a favorite color, what would that mean with regard to whether or not that's objectively the best color? Let's not do that. If you're interested in that extended conversation and diving into all the implications of that conversation, comment on this podcast or video. I'd love to hear what you want to know more about. But this is another example of subjective truth. So, third example, objectively true, that the earth rotates around the sun. I point out this example that the earth is rotating around the sun to state an important fact. Many years ago, the entire earth did not believe this to be true. Every person living on the world thought that the sun rotated around the earth. And it wasn't until technology got to a new place where we were able to actually observe, well, no, we're traveling around the sun. It's heliocentric, our solar system is. So, does everyone in the world thinking one thing make it true? No, it doesn't. We now know it to be objectively true that we're indeed rotating around the sun, not the other way around. So, likewise, if the Nazis had been successful, and if they had come to a place of saying, we are going to dominate the world, and succeeded in doing that, it would not have followed that because of that, and everyone in the world now thinks that indeed Jews should be killed, that that's objectively true. In other words, the entire consensus of the world doesn't define objective truth. Remember, we've talked about this on this podcast. Truth corresponds to reality. This is called the correspondence theory of truth. If you want to dive more into that, you can do so. Let me give you another example of something that's subjective. If I state a correct generality, but in a definitive way, so in other words, I'm stating something that's probably true, but I say that it will be true, well, that's not objectively true. So let's say I'm going to live to be 90 because I eat healthy foods and I exercise. Is that objectively true? Well, no, I've gone above and beyond what an actual objective truth claim might be. An objective truth claim here might be that if you eat healthy and you work out, you're more likely to live longer. But I've gone above and beyond that. And I've moved into the realm of something that I can't actually know. So it's subjective. It's not actually objective. I can't actually state with certainty, regardless of whether or not you or I think so that this is true. I think so, but it may not be true. I don't know that it's objective. I don't know the future. Only God does. So saying I'm going to live to be 90 because I eat healthy and I work out, it doesn't work. This is not objective truth. So I've given you 3 examples. Hopefully you really clearly understand the difference between objective and subjective. Now, the reason that this is the easiest of the 3 questions to cover, besides the fact that we've already talked about logic, is that this statement is actually what's called a self-refuting statement. I'm going to go ahead and explain to you what that means. It's really interesting. If I come to you and I say, there are no objective truths, what I've just done is I've made an objective truth claim. Now, let me explain this another way. I am saying that not just for me this is true, but for you this is true. For you, it's true that there's no objective truth claim. In fact, for every person in the world, it's true that there's no objective truth claim. It's objectively true that there are no objective truth claims. So you see, if this statement indeed is true, then it is indeed false. This is what's called a self-refuting claim. So are we right in believing a self-refuting claim? No, we're not. And this is very simple to understand. Let me tell you another self-refuting claim that is just pervasive today. You shouldn't judge people. That's wrong. Okay. It's a very interesting idea. If that's true that you shouldn't judge people, in me saying that to you and putting that ought statement on you, guess what I've just done? I've judged you. So I've actually, in a way, refuted my own claim by saying, you shouldn't judge people. It's not right, ever. You're wrong. I've actually refuted my claim, and I've showed that I'm willing to judge you on the topic of judging. So maybe the accurate claim would be, you shouldn't judge people except on the topic of judging. Now, no one goes around saying that. We like to virtue signal. We like to say, you shouldn't judge, and we're actively judging in the moment. Now, I want to bear in mind, the religion of Christianity ultimately does not have an ethic that says that judgment is wrong. Let me state that again. The religion of Christianity does not have an ethic that states that judgment is wrong. So Christians would do well to actually be careful about throwing this statement around. Now, is it true that we should not unfairly judge? Yes, it is, and Jesus has a lot to say on that. But when he talks about judgment in his Sermon on the Mount, he's actually going to give instructions for how to go ahead and do that judgment righteously. Don't reach into your brother's eye when he has a speck, when you have a huge one in yours. Instead, remove the log from your eye to then help pull the speck out of your brother's eye. In other words, make sure your judgment is fair, and make sure you're not judging someone on something that you yourself in your own life don't have figured out, that you can't see straight with. So in Christianity, we don't make this absurd claim. Now, I hear lots who are Christians, and especially a lot of youth who are Christians, making this claim that judgment in and of itself is wrong. And I just want to point out, it's self-refuting. This is just another powerful example of what a self-refuting claim is. So when we're evaluating this question, does objective truth exist? It really seems to me very simple to say the only possible answer to that question is yes. Because if the answer is no, then the answer is yes. So regardless of what we think about this, it actually doesn't matter, because even if we don't think objective truth exists, and we put that out as a statement, that makes objective truth exist. So it is true. Let me just say this final thing. It is true that objective truth exists. Now, this is important when it comes to Christianity, and I'm going to explain to you why this could destroy a faith system. If objective truth doesn't exist, then that has a powerful implication on Jesus' words in John 14:6, when he says, I am the way and the truth and the life. When he says that he's the truth, there's a significance to that. Of course, this comes in this discourse he's giving to his disciples. He's talking to his disciples, and he's questioned about this house. Jesus says he's going to go there. He's going to prepare rooms for the disciples, and the disciples are thick, and Thomas responds and says, we don't know where this house is. Can you airdrop us some directions or something? Okay, they didn't have airdrop back then. You get what I'm saying. And Jesus says, well, I'm the way and the truth and the life. You know me That's how you get to the Father. And so the idea that Jesus is presenting here, which is a foundational one in Christianity, is that we have a huge hope in death. And when Jesus dies and he rises, he goes to prepare a place for us so that when we die, we rise with him. And the reason that Jesus is the way has to do with the fact that he's the truth and he's the life. What Jesus says is truth. It's objective truth. And an assault on objective truth is an assault on the identity of Jesus Christ, the Logos, the Word. And that means that if we don't stand up and defend this point, when other people say objective truth doesn't exist, we are letting them make a fatal attack on our Savior and Messiah, Jesus Christ. And I'm not okay with that happening. I'm not going to let that go. And I'm going to point out that in and of the statement, objective truth doesn't exist, is an objective truth statement. I want them to at least admit that there is one objective truth statement, because if that is true, that there's at least one, then it can follow that there may be another one. Now, bear in mind, we have not proved Jesus yet. We're going to get there. We're going to talk about the reasons it's valid and sound to believe in Jesus. But for now, it's enough to know that it's possible that Jesus is the truth and that truth may be objective. So that is the purpose of this first episode of Dead in the Water. We're going to be moving on to 2 other topics. We will have a break somewhere in here where we're going to not have a post for a week, but between now and the next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have a few more videos. We're going to cover a few more topics. These are going to prime you and prepare you to dive into the important issues of theology. And so if you're a teenager that believes in God, stick along for the ride. If you are a teenager that doesn't believe in God, stick along for the ride. If you're an adult that just finds these podcasts helpful because it tries to go at a simpler level, and I don't always do that perfectly, stick along for the ride, because these questions are important and we need to have strong positions on these as Christians before we can even begin the task of trying to understand who God is, what God's plan is for our life, what his mission is for the church, and what happens when we die. We go to heaven, we go to hell, what that looks like. So, thanks for joining me today. This has been another episode of Theology for Teens. Have a great week.